In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the changes coming with the new Elder Scrolls Online Greymoor update that just launched today on PC and will be releasing later on console in just a couple weeks. So let's dive into that. The most notable thing being added with a new expansion besides the obvious of Western Skyrim and Blackreach is the new Antiquities system. This is sort of a new skill line, a couple of new skill lines that allows you to sort of go on these treasure hunts and find, by solving puzzles, find things like mythic items which are new to the game, which we'll talk about more. And also mounts, motifs, cosmetics, and even things like that you can add to your house. So this is a new system that's being added, and it's probably the focus of the expansion. As I mentioned, one of the new things that you'll be getting from these antiquities is mythic items. These are very, very powerful artifacts or equipment that you can slot. Some of them are heavy armor chests, some of them are rings, some of them are feet or necklaces. There's 6 of them in total, and these only one can be worn at a time because they're so powerful, and they have a powerful bonus. Some of them have a drawback. We've covered this in a separate video, so I won't go into it too much, but needless to say, these are going to become a big part of Elder Scrolls Online, and we expect to see more of these coming in future updates. The new Trial Kinds Aegis is being added to the game. This is a new 12-man instance that takes place on the northern coast of Western Skyrim. It has a normal and veteran version, and there are, of course, perfected versions of sets that are only found on the veteran difficulty, a unique skin, a unique multiplayer memento is being added, titles, and, of course, unique housing items. Besides the mythic item sets, there are 10 new sets being added to the game. These are the 3 Overland, Light, Heavy, and Medium for the region, the Western Skyrim, 3 new crafted sets, and 4 trial sets, 1 for each role. Besides these things, one of the major overhauls for this patch is the vampire update. Again, we've covered this in a separate video, so I'm not going to go into it in as much depth here. But the vampire skill line has been completely overhauled and now plays a little bit more like the werewolf in the sense that you're going to be using a lot more vampire abilities. You don't transform and you only have one skill line like the werewolf. But you get rewarded for using vampire skills because the cost of vampire skills gets reduced the higher stage of vampirism you have, and your regular ability cost increases the higher vampirism you have, which means you're going to want to try and use as many vampire abilities as you can to keep your resource costs low. This is particularly true if you use the vampire set. There is a set, obviously, that's been in the game for some time that's been revamped that revolves around vampire, that I believe is called Vampire Lord, that further reduce vampire ability skill costs. So this is going to reward you even more if you play this way. And using vampire skills is now criminal act, etc. In public. And kind of the way the vampire skill line has gaining tiers of vampirism has changed. Instead of feeding to reduce your vampirism level, now you're going to feed to increase it, and you'll need to feed regularly in order to maintain whatever vampirism level you desire. So besides these things, a lot of the skills in the skill line have been removed completely or changed in favor of other skills. For instance, Bat Swarm's been replaced by Blood Scion. There is a morph of Blood Scion that basically does what Bat Swarm used to do, but the ability itself is now more of a transformation. Undeath has moved to further down in the skill line, and things like Elusive Mist still remain. But there's also a really great ability called Mesmerize that allows you to CC around you in a large AoE. But if you want full details on this skill line, be sure to check out our Vampire Skills video as I cover all of these in depth. When it comes to class changes, when it comes to Nightblade, we'll start with them first. Veiled Strike has now been changed to set stun and off balance when used from flank rather than stealth, so that's quite a big buff for Nightblades. Otherwise, not really much change with the class. As far as all other classes are concerned, they had almost no changes whatsoever other than bug fixes for some of their skills. So this is an expansion where we see, and a DLC update where we see almost no class changes. This is almost unheard of. I don't think I've ever seen no class changes in an update. So ZeniMax clearly feels they have class balance right about where they want it for the moment. Werewolf also got a bit of a minor overhaul. It still works the same way it did when it got its major overhaul last year. But a couple of things, they just tweaked a lot of the skills. We're going to run you through the Werewolf skills here so you can have a look at them. But we're not going to dive into them too deeply. Most of them just got minor tweaks in terms of what they did damage-wise, or they added a slight health or stamina recovery to their abilities, or extended duration or reduced duration for a couple things. But essentially, Werewolf should be a lot better off than it was before. Other than that, other skills that were affected, almost no weapon skills were affected other than heavy attacks with the Restoration Staff, now this ticks kind of like the Lightning Staves do. And the Barrier ultimate from the support skill line was increased to 250 ultimate from 200. Otherwise, not really much was changed skill-wise across the board. A lot of old sets were revamped during this update. This is probably one of the biggest things. I'm glad that ZeniMax is doing this because there's a lot of sets out there that really don't see any use. We're going to run you through these. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but I'm going to talk about some of the ones that are more notable. One set, Amber Plasm, which was excellent for sustain, giving you 250 magicka and stamina recovery as its 5-piece bonus. Now adds 276 and adds health recovery, so it's become even stronger. The Kvatch Gladiator set now increases your weapon damage by 1475 against targets under 25% health. This is a change from increasing your weapon damage by 1800 with light and heavy attacks against them. So now this is going to benefit all of your attacks against low health targets, so it's a lot more powerful than it used to be. Another set that's particularly interesting that got a change in this update is the Tormentor set. This set previously only worked with charge abilities, and now it works with charges, leaps, teleports, and pulls. So this means you can potentially use this set as a werewolf tank, because you can leap into enemies and taunt them all at once, which is pretty fucking cool. Another set I mentioned earlier in the video is Vampire Lord. This set now, instead of increasing your spell damage with vampire abilities, now actually increases the damage you take from flame, regular ability cost, but also decreases the vampire ability cost for each of your stages up to a further 20% reduction. So this means between the Stage 4 Vampirism and this set, you can get 44% reduction on vampire skills. This includes ultimate. So this is a very, very good set if you plan on playing as a vampire most of the time. The Balorg monster set now only gives you weapon and spell damage equal to the ultimate spend instead of double, but it also grants you physical and spell penetration equal to 23 times the amount spent and increases the duration to 12 seconds. So this should be a buff overall, or roughly the same at least. Bloodspawn was finally nerfed. The armor that got buffed from this has been reduced to 3,300 down from 6,450, and the ultimate you got is now 8 instead of 14, and the duration cooldown is 5 seconds. So you get it a little bit more often, but it's going to be less useful, and the ultimate gain is a lot less. This is going to nerf stamina builds, particularly in PvP, pretty hard. Earth Gore got a bit of a tweak. This is a pretty popular set. It now heals basically the same amount of health over 10 seconds rather than 6, so it's trying to prevent burst healing, but the cooldown of it has been reduced to 20 seconds from 35, so you're going to get that effect more often, which is nice. Engine Guardian, which is another popular PvP set, has been tweaked. The set now restores 550 magicka and stamina per tick rather than 1204, and the healing has been increased a bit from 1204 to 1955, so if you get the healing buff, it's going to heal more. And the range of the beam's been reduced to 15 meters down from 28, so it's not going to be as effective if you're running around on a landscape and being chased by people. Probably not going to hit you as much. Any Monster Helm set that had 295 armor as its one-piece bonus has now had that reduced to 1,487, which is pretty painful because you could get like 6,000 armor if you put 2 separate pieces with this one-piece bonus, so that's a huge nerf. The resource gain on Symphony of Blades has been reduced from 2,325 down to 570, which is a huge decrease. However, the cooldown of 18 seconds is now applied per target rather than overall, which means you can get this going on multiple targets at once, which is great for PvP or in trial scenarios, etc. Thorvokun has been nerfed heavily. This is generally what I use when tanking on my Templar. The damage has been reduced to 100 down from 430, and the cooldown of this has been increased to 16 seconds from 8 seconds, so it's going to be drastically less effective. Another fan favorite and one of my favorite sets, Falcon Square, the one piece of this now grants 1,487 spell penetration rather than max health, and the Meteor Splash has been reduced a bit from 4,000 down to 3,535. Pretty much every Monster Helm set in the game has been tweaked in some way. I only covered some of them, but if you want to see them all, be sure to check out the wiki. The same goes with the unique weapon sets, the special ones you get from like Maelstrom Arena and Asylum Sanctorium, Black Rose Prison, etc., Dragonstar Arena. These have all just about all been tweaked in some way or another. We'll have a full list of these for you, but also you can check them out on the wiki if you want specifics on these. There's just too many to list. There really aren't too many miscellaneous changes for this update. Most notably, the one I can think of off the top of my head is that bash damage has been reduced by 80%, but the glyphs of increased bash damage, I can't remember what they're called, now significantly increase bash damage, as well as the bash skill from the one-handed shield line increases your bash a lot more damage. So they're trying to nerf the overall bash damage in the rotation of some DPS builds in exchange for, tweaking these things. Should come out to be the same roughly for players who don't bash all that often. But other than that, there really aren't too many major changes. I think overall this is the least amount of changes I've ever seen in an expansion. It's kind of disappointing, really. I mean, I know a lot of people are on ZeniMax about overcorrecting and tweaking too much. So kudos for them for not doing that. But at the same time, there's no real quality of life improvements here. I don't see anything that is really changing with this update. You're getting a new zone and you're getting a new activity with antiquities, but you're really not getting a lot more than that, which is, I think, barely more than a DLC. So it's kind of disappointing. I hope to see the next expansion for them to add another class or some other skill line that's really impactful, because the two that are being added really are only designed for the antiquity system specifically. So there's nothing that's going to be used outside of that. I love where they're going with the revamp of old sets. I hope they continue doing this just over and over. Every DLC, just keep revamping more and more, because I love to see the meta just keep getting shaken up. But for those of you that were hoping for class balancing changes, or you're not happy with where your class is, unfortunately, almost nothing was done on the class front. I'm a Templar. I love where Templars are at right now, so that doesn't bother me. But if you're some other class that's like really frustrated, I feel for you. But that's all there is for the breakdown this time. Be sure to check out our other videos. We go in more depth about the mythic items, vampire skills, the new sets, etc. But this is just kind of a recap of the whole thing. We'll see you guys out there.